Hey everyone, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It's Monday here on planet Earth on the East Coast of the US. It is the 31st of October. It is Halloween. It's 2022, according to the calendar we've been using. And we are here in this present moment. So tomorrow is the All Saints Day, the Day of the Dead. Today is Halloween, Scorpio vibes everywhere you look. Mercury is now in Scorpio. And the co-ruler of Scorpio that is more representative of our personalized action on the intensity of the Scorpio vibes. Our friend Mars is just stationed retrograde yesterday, and who felt the brick wall that we all ran into? It's going to be an interesting journey through this retrograde. I gotta say, it's going to take us out into March in terms of the entire sequence, right? It's going to be retrograde through November into early December. But it's really going to be leading up into March, and certainly as we finish out this current eclipse cycle that we are smack dab in the middle of, it is like a portal in many ways. And we're going to go over the reading that we did last week, just kind of check in with some of that imagery. And of course, I have a reading to share with you today as well about we're still in it. We're still completely, firmly in the wormhole between the two eclipses. So if it is feeling like just that level of intensity, just know that that's part of what's going on right now. And so we're all feeling it. You can, it appears, and I can speak from my own experience, of course, talking to people, talking to clients, talking to other people in my life, just being observant of what's been happening and aware of the cosmic clock of astrology, just knowing that everybody's hitting like the next layer, right? There is a layer that has been pulled back, and that came with the initiation, I think, mostly of the solar eclipse, but has been going on for a while. I'd say definitely since Virgo season in many ways. And we're just pulling back the next layer, and it is tender. It's got all the Chiron feels associated with it. And Chiron in Aries is in a natural quincunx, or that 150-degree angle with Scorpio, and they're both ruled by Mars. And so Mars hitting that brick wall of the retrograde, right? We're still in the Gemini energy of that there is, in fact, a brick wall, or at the very least, an antithesis to anything that you can think and any idea you come up with, any way that you express yourself. There is a corresponding but opposite position, because that's what Gemini represents. So the brick wall, I feel like, got hit big time, especially pulling back the onion, the layers of the onion, or stripping bare down to our essential selfhood. It's been pretty intense and very painful, and really bringing people to the next level of their process. Real deep healing is really being addressed now, I feel like. And so give yourself the opportunity to really engage that more if you need to. It's so easy to get pulled out of that process. And sometimes it's just not time for that next level of healing until the surface levels have been cleared away. And there's something so powerful about this solar eclipse and this window in particular, as with all eclipses. But this one really, I felt like, broke us open down deeper than maybe we had anticipated or could really imagine. And so this ministry broadcast, and truly the transmission that is going to be shared through my own process and the reading, we really do want to honor ourselves and honor the masculine aspect of all of this in some ways. And we're gonna extract some general themes here from this reading, but with Mars stationing retrograde and knowing that it's just going to be in this shadow now up until the spring to really kind of dig your heels in a little bit and be prepared for the levels of journey we're going into, and that there's no quick fix to anything, but there are solutions that are truly being presented to us and that we're already engaging, right? I think that's a lot of it as well. And just know that the shit show that is Uranus, especially because it will be conjunct the eclipsed full moon on the 8th on election day here in the US. I mean, just know that that is in fact like the plot twist of the shit show, and to know that we're still right in the middle of it. Now, what's interesting and something that I'm going to be reporting on and offering to either my subscriber base or as a single digital download is the weekly astrology starting tomorrow, right? And so I'm going to be doing that weekly astrology breakdown still, but it's going to be only offered to my subscriber base or on a singular purchase kind of standard that you can get through my website. But we do have our first quarter moon, and it's in Aquarius. It's Aquarius as of today, and tomorrow will be our first quarter moon. So that first square tension, that first crisis point from the eclipse. And so you can really feel it has been building, right? And I'm going to show you a little bit of space weather, show how the solar winds that have been coming in have been, reverberating outside of us, within us, of course, and how, as much as that's been uncomfortable, it's also breaking loose, and we have to kind of continue that process and nurture it and give ourselves the time and the space and the focus to keep that process going, right? Just like any type of natural healing modality, herbal supplements, anything that you are working to heal that is pretty significant and entrenched, right? So trauma from our childhood, trauma, all kinds of trauma that we go through just by virtue of being in a material existence like this. And not to mention the fact that we're bringing a lot of layers multidimensionally and at a soul level of many experiences coming through all of us very physically and very materially, right? The reason I'm still recording this and not going live, even though that's where we all want to be, and to be able to be touching base with people and each other, is that, my bathroom, it's still just dragging out. And if that isn't some sort of example of like a real life boots on the ground example about how the esoteric, energetic, spiritual aspects of your own inner world will manifest and find their way to you to reflect that, right? And, the bathroom is where you cleanse yourself, where you practice your hygiene rituals, where you are honoring the purified vessel that is your body and your physicality. And so going through a complete overhaul of that type of structure is something that's partly Pluto, right? That happened. Pluto ruling also this eclipse because it's a Scorpio eclipse, right? We have all this energy in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio. Mercury is now in Scorpio. They're all going to meet the south node, or K2, or the descending node of the moon, which is why we had an eclipse in the first place, because those things were all lined up together. So this is power that we've previously developed and accessed as a result of transformation, but it's in its opposition of Taurus, where we're going to have the transformation, which is where Uranus is. And we know that Uranus is like that thunderbolt, lightning trigger of awakening. And to have it with the eclipse on the 8th, it's going to be quite the week, okay? So you may want to check out or consider even subscribing on a monthly basis. You get the Catalyst Classroom, you get the Starseed Fellowship Zoom call, which is every other week, and then you're going to be able to have access to the weekly astrology. Because the moon in Aquarius, my gosh, like a moment of aloofness, a little bit emotionally, right? It's been pretty intense. And to be able to emotionally tap into the resonance of the collective without necessarily fully identifying with the feels of that. It seems pretty important right now, and it will, I think it will truly feel in that moment of like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to use the same tools that I have already brought forward and mastered to try to fix the damage that these same tools have already created? Or is there a way to identify within ourselves and how we adapt to whatever's going on in our life? How do we adapt to it? How do we take the symbolic essence of who we are and actually put it into action? And it's gonna, we're going into territory we have never been in, individually, right, personally, and also collectively. And those things are interwoven. They're not separate anymore, because that's what it means to be moving into a different density of experience. Fifth density of experience means that those aspects of where we've been and where we're going are way closer together in terms of what time is, right? So there's manifestation instantly, and there is no difference between what's going on within you and what's going on outside of you. And so we have to still, keep the vessel clear and flush out the gunk, or address the areas that are so deeply embedded that we didn't know until now, because something had to break open within us. So the reading is incredibly positive for how intense things are right now. So let's actually get into some of the space weather here, because I want to show that the Schumann seems to give us a pretty good clue when we're going to get bombarded with solar activity within like 3 days. And I'm starting to see this pattern where the Schumann will amplify 50, 60, 70, and there's nothing going on in terms of the sun necessarily, but it's like 3 days later, all of a sudden, we get hit with plasma and solar wind, and we start feeling all the physical sensations of it, right? There's headaches, there's achy joints, and all of the ways that, that your body is saying, okay, we're running cleanup detail now, because there's just been an activation of, solar radiation, right? And plasma and magnetic changes in our own field. And so when that happens, the body responds and is just like, all right, well, whatever was damaged needs to get cleaned up, and and so that everything is functioning optimally. So it's very interesting, and I think that that's one of the things they want to kind of hide about the Schumann is how it is our way of our cheat. It's our own natural cheat code, right? I think that that's pretty important. So I'm going to share it with you real quick. And of course, this is what we're doing in the Catalyst classroom right now. It's all about the sun. So we've done all of the solar weather, physics, nuclear fusion versus the electric universe, and plasma cosmology. We talked about that. We talked about, I did all the astrology in terms of, and what eclipses mean, astrologically, astronomically. So we're talking all about the star and our stars in particular. And the next session is going to be all the esoteric, out there, woo-woo stuff that we all think about and all really, wonder about, the stuff that is, that we know may be true inside us intuitively, but has not been necessarily disclosed to us, or more of the esoteric versions of things, right? What is the black sun? Do we have two suns? The idea that Jupiter is actually the second sun, but it can only be experienced in fifth density as a star. And so in third density, where we are, it is a gas giant, right? These kinds of things that we're going to cover in the next Catalyst classroom. So that is something that monthly subscribers have access to as well. So let's move over here to our Schumann, right? So today's the 31st, yesterday was the 30th, Saturday was the 29th, right? So you can see there's a little bit of activity in terms of the amplification, right? And so the idea here is that the Schumann is measuring the amplification, the volume, the height of the wavelength, the frequency of the wavelength, and the quality of the wavelength of the electromagnetic field, or the magnetosphere, right? That the magnetic field has its own wavelength. wavelength. So it hasn't, it was a little bit active on the 29th, right? And then it just really settled out. Well, look at what was going on as well. We had a solar storm on the 29th that started to settle down, but it was still kind of peaking up into the yellow. And then by today, it's starting to calm down. You can see the same thing in measuring of the solar wind. So especially when this red line is really drastically up and down, and you see that the blue line has these dots that flip from top to bottom, this is an indication that there is disturbance in the magnetosphere, because the plasma from the solar wind is interacting with the plasma in the magnetosphere, and then there is, an upheaval, just like the wake in a lake or something, or you throw a stone in there. But just imagine it's just like a complete bombardment, and it just creates this reverberation. And so when the density of particles seemed pretty stable, so that's useful. It's when it gets really dense that you can really feel the symptoms. But even the speed and the temperature, you can see there was an elevation, and it stayed fairly elevated, and now it's all kind of settling down. So, and we did have a coronal hole stream that we're in the middle of now, so kind of the ones over here that are going out of view. It looks like there's more to come, so that's something to be aware of. But the thing that I think is really interesting that I'm going to share with you, again, about the Schumann, is how we can really use this, and what it seems like they really don't want us to figure out here, is that, and I think sometimes the Schumann does spike when it's artificially, or there is outside, there's an outside trauma that to aspects of the planet that, maybe there's some sort of electromagnetic frequency that is discharged that is not from the sun, that is from a technological source. I think that will make the Schumann amplify too, just like when you're really scared, your heart starts beating, or if you're distressed. I think it's the same thing. That's my personal opinion. I'm sure there are other people that would probably match that or have something to add to that. So what I want to share here is just the looking at more of a longer term, or over a longer time period. There we go, of the Schumann. So here's the 27th, which we didn't see on the bigger graph, right? And you can see that there was a pretty strong amplification, right? It went up to, I think, 50, 60, or 70 when it's usually hanging out at like 7. It's not very loud when it's at rest, just like a resting heartbeat. So this amplified, they got louder, the wavelength got bigger, right? The volume got louder. And then after that, we got the solar wind. And if you go back, I invite you really to do your own research, but this is a pattern I'm starting to notice. If you go back and you start to look at, okay, these are the times where the Schumann seemed to spike. What was going on? Well, the 25th was when we had the eclipse. And so right before that, you see that there's a big amplification. And there seems to be kind of like a 2-3 roughly day period of calm and then amplification into the white. So these are the patterns that if you just pay attention on a regular basis and you learn about it along the way, of course, then you start to see. So, I mean, there's been times in the past where the Schumann resonance was like up at 6,000 or something ridiculous, or 600 or whatever it's measured at. So that's also a good time to pay attention to how you feel, right? What are your physical symptoms? What are your emotional levels, right? Where is your, how is your nervous system really functioning? Because it is electrical, our nervous system. So that's something to consider as well, that is, managing everything, our sensory and perception. So when that's impacted by disturbances in electromagnetics, then that's going to affect us. So and then you can have a sense of presence in the moment of like, well, this is how I can counterbalance that with my own consciousness, right? There's the trick. So that's what I wanted to share with you about the space weather. So what I'm going to do now is bring up the reading from last week just to kind of check in about it here. I'm going to move over here. All right, friends. So you remember we had the devil and the tower reversed as our outcome. And, Mars stationing retrograde, it really did feel kind of like this, not blind destruction so much as hitting the wall and the tower type of moment kind of being internalized or maybe not fully expressed yet. And when you have the devil upright, that would suggest that there's a really strong power structure surrounding that maybe is not getting impacted with, the full amount of the tower energy. And the agent of the tower in the tarot is Mars, the planet Mars. And so we know there's a lot of fire there. We had the Princess of Wands that was reversed. So, I feel like that this was really setting us up for that eclipse, for the actual eclipse, and the week we've been through since the eclipse is been pretty trying. And I think that this retrograde Mars is we're either going to become our own worst enemy, right? Or we're going to turn on ourselves, or something else is going to turn, right? A tide of some sort is going to turn. The attention's going to turn. Who was once the enemy is going to now become not the enemy, okay? And when you have such a strong structure that is Capricornian in nature, right, that truly Pluto in the more cosmic transpersonal way has been destroying these structures. It's really Mars that we directly connect with in terms of these destructive capacities, right, feeling it kind of building within ourselves. So we had Venus in the earth signs, or the princess of the discs, that had the staff really staked down into the ground, where we found the spiritual community, our family, right, our personal life, our inner sense of who we are, and our character really being identified with where we belong and who we belong with, and what really allows us to feel that safety and security and a sense of vulnerability emotionally, and realizing that there is an initiation process, that going through this process, really grounding ourselves into kind of that Cancerian energy, which is where Black Moon Lilith is, by the way, and over the weekend especially came to 0 degrees and stationed to go direct again. So the lunar apogee oscillates just like everything else seems to. And so when you read for the true Lilith, that's what you're doing, is looking at the oscillation back and forth in the signs. Just like I said, just like everything else seems to wobble, right, in its rotation. So I'm sure at some point we're going to come to realize that that's not an accurate description. And I'm sure if some people I'm sure know more about this than I do, but if you go back to, like 16th century, astronomy, astrology, and alchemy, I'm sure that there are other explanations too for why we have this, and even further back, right, Vedic texts and things like that. So, but that's what we're working with right now, that things wobble on an axis. So, and the lunar apogee does oscillate. And so it did. It came back to 0 degrees Cancer in the zodiac and stationed, and now is moving direct back through Cancer. Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, is in Cancer right now. So, and with all of the Scorpio energy, like getting into the feels and knowing where your feels are really safe to be what they are is really important, and being open to receiving, the next level of your initiation, because you're allowing your feels to be present and sensitive, because you trust who and what is around you to hold you, whether that be your marriage, your friendships, your family, your spiritual community, your national identity, your tribal or clan identity, right? Whatever it is for you, whatever that fourth house is for you, it's so important to get that situated for yourself so that you can be emotionally vulnerable and follow the pathway of your intuition through your own healing, right? And we're going to see that that's a big part of today's reading. So, of course, not taking things too seriously, right? The roadrunner is the boots on the ground, but it's still a bird. And knowing that whatever has been broken open is really the gift of our own consciousness and our higher self being revealed to us, right? And that balance comes back. So I feel like, that this really set us up for the eclipse itself and the week that has been transpiring. So if we look at today's reading, there is still fire. We have the devil reversed, which is to me an amazing sign of the chains being broken, liberation, free from our, compulsive or over institutionalized structures or patterns, whatever they are. So as we go through this one by one, there's a couple things that I'd love to bring out. Just in general, right? There's a lot of masculine. There's a lot of masculine, and there's a lot of, in particular, royal masculine in this chart. We have two kings. We have the King of Keys, King of Forces, right next to each other. One upright, one not upright. And at the center is the Knight of Wands, right? So the fire of the fire. It doesn't get any more fire than that. And then we have the Divine Physician, which is truly a masculine energy that's being presented in the imagery, and even the Sands of Time, which is a man being pictured. And I used to kind of push away the gendered aspect of the tarot and even some of the Sabian symbols early on, because I figured that it was coming from a perspective that was only valuing the masculine. But if you really pay attention to the symbolism as a whole, you will see that gender is presented as part of the symbolic framework as much as everything else. And so there's a lot of masculine. There's a lot of court cards that are masculine. The Sands of Time has a man in it. And the Divine Physician is very much this Jesus type of characters we're going to see, but is masculine, right? And I think that there's something really important about our own masculine, whether it is represented by the men in our lives, if it's our own masculine within, if it's the masculine energy that has expressed itself through our families, through a paternal lineage. That's a big one that's been coming up. And certainly just through the masculine as a whole, and what has been very out of balance about not only the gendered positions, but just the masculine in general, is really on the table right now. So that's, and another thing that I came out pretty strongly was the Six of the Six of Scrolls, the Sands of Time, the Divine Physician is a 6, and of course the Devil card is 15, which breaks down to 6. And what I feel here is that, we can't discount that masculine because that is the seed itself. That is the projection of the seed out from the cosmic consciousness of Pisces through Aries and Mars, right? Through fire, through spiritual inspiration, through the spark of divinity. And it's a very penetrating and outward momentum. It's cardinal fire where, Mars rules. And yes, there's a lot of Scorpio, but and Jupiter has come out, by the way. Jupiter has come out of Aries in its retrograde and is now back into its home territory, one of them, of Pisces. But Chiron is still holding firm right at 13 to 14 degrees Aries. This is a big star in the Andromeda constellation. It is the star above her head. This is Andromeda and Starseed activation and continues to be so. And is in a quincunx directly with the South Node, okay? So, and that continues to happen. So now that Mars is stationed in its retrograde, it's not any less powerful, but it's now, like I said, the script has flipped and will continue to be so at least until December. And we're going to learn a lot about duality within ourselves. And there's something very powerful about honoring the masculine and honoring the masculine's need to heal in order to step forward in its true role. Because, again, the feminine, I feel like, is taking on way too much right now. And this is part of taking on the masculine's healing or taking on the masculine's role because of where the masculine is. And I know this might be getting kind of too archetypal, but you know where this is in your life. Like I said, it could be, and when you have court cards like this, it's usually you or me or a person in my life or your life that represents the masculine energy. So it's very present in the actual people. And what I get a lot of vibe here is, again, boots on the ground, that perspective that I think was really necessary in order to observe the whole picture at the moment of the eclipse. It's now time to start really putting some energy into how does this come through in the material? How is this going to manifest in my reality right in front of me? And how has it been? That's the other thing, and is the health stuff and in the body itself. Remember, Taurus, which is where Uranus is, the ruler of Aquarius, which is where the north node of the moon, or the ascending node of the moon, is in Taurus, okay? And Pluto's in Capricorn right now. So, but the Taurus energy is the medium of our growth. It is the soil, and it is inherent value. And I think that there's something here very important about these two aspects kind of coming together. When we don't value the spark of divinity and the natural divine masculine in and of itself, because Chiron here is really bringing these wounds of that right to the surface. What we put forward in terms of the yearning and the coalescing and the communion of Scorpio is going to reflect that, right? It all starts with the seed being, embedded in the medium of growth, which is Taurus. And so we're really being pulled back, I think, into these places, while Scorpio is so like you just finding yourself falling through the mirror in some ways. And the Mars aspect in Gemini, I think, is kind of our middle ground, even though we definitely hit the wall, right? We pulled ourselves down as far as we could, and then Mars station retrograde. Or by the way, it's going to be different wherever you are, but I'm getting really good visual in the morning on Mars in the western sky. So it's very bright, and it's just going to get brighter. So if you're a stargazer, you got a backdoor telescope like I do, like it's starting to, and you are, depending on where you are, but for me, 4, 5, 5:30 in the morning where it's still dark, but Mars is pretty strong in the western sky. So that's something that, if you're into that could be something that you could incorporate into this process, because I think it really, it's not the feminine that needs to do the work for the masculine. The feminine is meant to hold the space, and that's a great place to start, because that's where I feel like Venus in Virgo, or our 9 of discs here, the gain that we have made so far, is really important. This really suggests to me, and the thing that really popped out as I looked, really felt into this card, is we've gathered in the fruits of our labors, and we're kind of settling into them, okay? And it allows us a sense of self-sufficiency, prosperity. We've done a lot of work already on ourselves. And I think Virgo season really, really, brought that, like, leading into the equinox. I think we did a lot of work in this area, this Virgo type of area, right? And there are things I think that we have gained that have been successful, right? That we learned where we need to take better care of ourselves, or we came to realize the benefit of patience and work and our labors. And there's some well-being here and some wealth, and we can settle into that. Now, if you have, you're going to settle down in and enjoy the fruits of your labor. You may not exactly enjoy the fruits of your labor to the extent you were hoping, but this is where we learn from things, right? And it can be a little bit of a bummer with Venus and Scorpio right now, because of the way that she just allows herself to get pulled back down into, indolence and a sense of delusion and intoxication, right? It's very easy as we continue to get closer to the holidays, at this time of year. It really, especially with all the Scorpio energy, it can get really deep and dark. And that's part of what's happening right now, is that Venus is kind of in the underworld too. And so we can find ourselves kind of feeling, there's just so many ways to, and there's so many options when Venus is in Scorpio, but it really just weighs us down in that sense. We have to kind of focus on the one cup that we want to drink from and make sure we're taking care of that, because it's really easy to kind of just get lost in everything that Scorpio represents. Anyway, so, but to not forget how far we've come, right? And what we have gained, and what sense of value we have gained about our own selves. This is really, I think, a very strong message. So moving into the present moment, right? And moving into, I think, just really this crisis in action. If there was ever an action energy, it's the fire, it's the wands, it's the forces. And the Knight is the fire element. It is that outwards, it's action based on pure creativity and spiritual realization. Very high inspirations here, and very a born leader, committed to a cause, right? Proud and commanding, right? There's a lot of Leo energy as well. A bold person, right? Who pledges loyalty like a knight. I mean, and the other thing you see here is a black horse. A nightmare. This was recently brought to my attention. It was one of those things of like, oh yeah, words actually mean something. The nightmare, the black horse, the black feminine, the female horse is the mare, right? And that is definitely what the Knight of Wands is riding, because this represents the transition from Scorpio into Sagittarius, which is where we're headed, right? And so I think that at the heart here, in the center of all of this, we are bold and inspired and ready to go for all kinds of reasons, okay? And this is great. This is what we want in our heart. We want that energy of a commanding presence and spiritual inspiration and pure creativity. And it's kind of hard with Mars in that retrograde, I'm not going to lie, because it feels like it was like a brick wall. But in some ways, it's almost like a switchback. You're not really going backwards. It just looks like that because you're doing a switchback. And so why not bring this energy to that situation right now? I feel like, and you kind of have to, because you don't want to burn yourself out too. This is a very intensely potent energy with the Knight of Wands, okay? You can, when it's not very well aspected, or if it's in its inversion in some way, I mean, this can be very dominating and cruel and very destructive. And we did see that destructive energy with the Tower reverse. Now there's something about this retrograde that again is going to be like, if you don't realize it's a switchback, you might have a hard time. But I think based on this reading is that we are very poised to finally break some real bounds and some chains here, right? And to release ourselves from something that is so deep that it's probably been going on for lifetimes. And I think many starseeds know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and it's coming out in all kinds of different ways in our personal lives, right? In our own intuitive experiences. So, you're not alone if you're just like, whoa, I've just hit like this next level that I just didn't realize how deep it really was. This is where we are now. This is what the eclipse broke open for all of us. And we have there's so much heart here that is this, and again, the nightmare. I mean, just know that, there's riding the head of the dragon here, right? Mars is riding that dragon. It is not being controlled by it, or is not hanging on by the tail, just gripping for dear life. This knight is riding and is saddled and is in control. And it's got this huge torch, right? And the horse is like up on its hind legs, right? It is rearing to go. So this is, I think, very favorable and reminder of just like how much of that purifying energy is really at the heart of us right now, and to not lose hope for yourself. Now, the sands of time, when it's reversed, it's kind of like, hey, you have way more time than you realize. And I would say that that's actually true, because when you have this Knight of Wands energy, of course, you're going to be like, charge forward. And on the ground here in the lower chakras, right, in terms of your material and subconscious existence. And when I say subconscious, this is where manifestation starts, is in the subconscious mind. This is where we direct our energy and focus from what's going on here. So it's almost like it's time to roll up your sleeves in order to get some serious healing work done. Like the task at hand may require more thought, more research, more time, and you may need to connect with others to help you. You might not be able to do it alone, right? If you are needing some extra support, right? You see a practitioner, you see a reader, you get a new type of process or nutritional focus or anything like that. That's okay, right? And I think that sometimes when this card is reversed, it does, because this is just this one masculine dude. This is one dude here rolling up his sleeves. And this is like, hey, there needs, if you need to ask for help, it's okay, because there's more that needs to be done here in this level, right? Again, we're charging forward here, and we're like, I've come so far, like I'm so ready to just settle into this. And our hearts are just like, let's go, right? I am ready to face my shadow. And it's like, okay, well, there's still more work down here that needs to be done. And it is absolutely healing work. And in fact, if you look at what is surrounding it, which is a little out of order for this, but we're going to go for it, the divine physician, right? Here, I mean, healing, this is Reiki healing, right? Coming right from his hands. He's got the caduceus over his heart, right? He's got the bucket with the well in the background. It's going right to her heart chakra. And these two are back here in balance. And so there's masculine, there's feminine, there's masculine, and there's feminine, right? And so there is a sense of community here. There's a sense of support, but there's also part of the masculine is the masculine aspect of this divine physician is the projection out, right? You actually have to sit down or get into that space and project either your energy out or become a channel for the energy to project out, as in practicing Reiki, right? You're not projecting or manipulating your own energy or anyone else's when you're practicing Reiki. You are a divine channel, but you have to actually be a channel in which for the light and for that divine highest frequency of light to be able to come through. And when the 6 like this is reversed, I mean, it's pretty standard here about we need to all take better care of ourselves. And we may have lost sight of our self-care. We may have gotten sidetracked. It's so easy to do, especially with Venus and Scorpio, because we are looking to get deeper and feel a sense of real value and worth from something that we can invest ourselves into. And we got to start investing in ourselves. And it's easy to get sidetracked from this path, right? Or you've gotten a little bit of gain and then you're just like, oh, I can go back to those old habits, right? So it's time to get back to this care again, right? And self-honoring. It's such a huge piece of our own health and wellness. And so attend to the ingredients that lead to your health. And that's your thoughts, your emotional state, and then certainly what you're actually putting in and how you are able to get things out of your body that aren't doing anything except festering in there, okay? And I mean, this really drives the point is the goose, because it says it's time to rest and recuperate rather than continue striving. Pretty difficult when you have the Knight of Wands in the heart, right? That's just like, I'm ready to ride this, and we are being really asked at a on the ground level, at the very least, to pay more attention to our well-being and to take care of ourselves here instead of striving, right? It's okay, right? We have gotten very far, and I think there is this sense of like, let's go. But this is that's not going to break the chains unless we are taking the time to really value and honor ourselves. So if that means rest, that means taking a break, that means recuperation, if that means that you have to really set boundaries in your life for people that normally are always coming to you for things, and to be you kind of doing the empathing for a lot of people, it's going to suck. And maybe you're on the other side of that too. And it may be a blessing in disguise, because it is renegotiating all of these boundaries. So, and I see that with, clients I'm working with in their own ways, right? That, and just people in general, that this may be part of that as well too. But we really honor and take care of ourselves right now. The next layer needs to be expressed, and sometimes it's so deeply entrenched in there, you need to get creative or add some intervention, right? So, because here's the mountain goat, and let's look actually at the energy here at the top of our awareness, right? Up in these upper chakras, where we're being inspired, our intuition through the pineal, even that throat chakra where we are expressing and expressing ourselves, expressing our own vibratory force, which is in the heart. King of forces, right? This is Mother Nature's son. And here is another divine masculine energy, especially with the power of nature all around us. It's very calming. So maybe in your awareness, there's a man that is providing this, or a masculine influence. Maybe it's about cultivating and focusing your awareness on this type of calming masculine influence in your life. Because the presence of this person, it has a very powerful and positive energy, and there is honesty, there are good intentions, there's gentleness. And sometimes we can, when we don't feel a value within ourselves, we also will start projecting that same thing is what other people are holding, or, feel about us, right? And then we kind of inadvertently, that's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Then we end up creating situations where people do not value us, because we have been projecting that through the way we treat ourselves. So be sure to honor and be tender to yourself in order to engage this energy, right? You have to do this, and this is a very Taurus energy, right? Know that the power of nature is moving in and all around us at all times. It's just a matter of refocusing our attention here and realizing that it is the influence of the feminine that holds the space for the masculine to be this calming influence, to have this presence, and to exhibit these good intentions and the power of nature, okay? This is a great place to put our focus, because, again, something's out of balance, and this is what the mountain goat really represents, something out of balance. And since we're talking about the patron of not only Capricorn, but this devil card that is reversed, it is, it's these structures themselves that are out of balance, and we're being tasked to focus at least one foot in front of the other to correct it, or notice how we feel when we are out of balance. One foot in front of the other, right? You don't get to the top of the mountain without doing that. And so there's a lot of perseverance that on some level we want to exhibit. And that Knight of Wands is pretty, I'm like burning the Palo Santo. It was very unconscious that I grabbed it, but it's clear that this is what needs to happen right now. Palo Santo is not a clearing agent. For those of you who are kind of new to burning things, Palo Santo is meant to attract. It's got a sweet, it's a wood that you're burning, and it's got more of a sweet kind of aroma to it that is more enticing, and it's meant to really invite in that which you want to be in your space. So, you can cleanse with sage, right? That really does like reset and cleanse out, and probably has some sort of balancing function with the ions in the atmosphere. But it's Palo Santo that really draws in the energy you want to be around. And so that's why I use it. but something is out of balance, and even noticing what it is, and one foot in front of the other. Yeah, maybe you slipped, right? Maybe you fell back. Maybe you haven't figured out that you're on a switchback and you think that you're like retracing your steps or something, right? Just know that it's one foot in front of the other. You don't get to the end of the trail without walking it. And so if you are traversing a very narrow pathway, which all of us really are, then you can only really just put one foot in front of the other. So if you find yourself leaning to one side or the other, or something's out of balance, it needs to be corrected. And with the King of Keys also here, another masculine royal energy that's actually reversed as well. We're having the difficulties with the masculine related to these material things, right? The success that we're looking for may be eluding you. We may be not feeling like we're having the payoff that we really have wanted or had already, right? One of the things that really struck me about this card when I was reading the little booklet, I do it all the time because something new pops out almost every time, and I could read the same paragraph hundreds of times and it will mean something different every time. So this is why it's so important to never stop having the capacity to want to learn, because the minute you do, you're missing so much that you otherwise would get just by continuing to return to those sources of information. So not that you can't have new ones, but it's your own intuition and your own alchemical process that actually allows you to get more out of that. Anyway, in the book, it said, focus on understanding how life's purpose can complement your career direction. And that's a big 10th house energy. And that's a big Capricorn energy. So we're all going through this very, very powerful clearing away and the alchemical process of death and destruction that Pluto at this transpersonal level is representing at a institutional level. And I think that what seems to be out of balance here is how to bring the spiritual healing elements into our very physical value-based material existence, because it is very much out of alignment and we feel out of alignment in this way. And this King of Forces, I think, is really the key, because there's something very calming and a necessity to honor ourselves in order to access this energy in the way that we really want to bring it into our actual living experience right now. So where this ends, thankfully, the Devil reversed, right? The Capricorn card, the release from the wheel of karma, or from the chains that bind us. And in particular, the question you want to ask here is how can you break the cycle? What is the means in which we do break the cycle? And when it's reversed, we are finding the keys to our liberation. The darkness lifts. We see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we really are still in this tunnel that's really like a wormhole that we can't really see anything, because it's the Scorpio eclipse, ring of fire that we're still falling through right now. And there is a release that seems to be coming, and we don't want to give up on where we've been with that 9 of discs and how far we've come. And we also don't want to get too settled in and not really take full advantage of our heart space, because that is where that spiritual inspiration is going to come from, right? The heart starts pumping and the blood starts moving through the body, and everybody knows that happens when you're excited, when you feel passion, when you feel lust, like when you feel a thrill, when you feel proud, right, and joyful. And with the Knight involved, it is a warrior energy to the max, right? Riding the black horse, the nightmare. You're not ruling me. I'm riding this shadow to the highest inspiration, right? This is shadow work to the extreme, but we have to give ourselves the time, the space, the self-honoring to do the self-care, self-healing rituals. Just knowing that it wasn't enough to break open. Now we have to actually deal with the abscess at the center of our being that we all have, right? And Chiron, this is so much of the Chiron lesson right now. Wow. Especially where it's at, 14 degrees Aries is the coiled serpent, right? The coiled serpent, the potential energy of the Kundalini that is really just a raw desire, the ritualization of relationship that is expressed through the sexual union, through any creative act where you bring that together. It is the coiled serpent. It is the undulating dragon of the nodal axis, or Draco. And I'm telling you what, dude, the Draco starseeds are just getting pummeled. But there is and because there is massive karmic clearing at the level of the Draco, that so many of the Draco starseeds are participating in, and it is ruthless. It is absolutely ruthless, but at the same time, having access to this mastery and this energy makes you like the divine physician. It allows you to tap into that energy for essentially force healing, right? Through vibration. And when you're tapping into the vibration of the divine creator directly through some modality and just by valuing yourself, you heal. I mean, and you transform and you alchemize yourself. But we have to really be very we have to honor ourselves and these processes, and there's so much that's pulling us back into the fray, that this moon in Aquarius, boy, it's really welcome, especially as an Aquarius person. And it's going to be essential, I think, to really lean into the crisis point of, well, what do I do in this moment? Because the Uranus connection to the full moon eclipse is something I think we can, with the moon in Aquarius, really tap into that and what will be necessary with, again, boots on the ground when it comes to that. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there for today. That is the Starseed Ministry. That is the transmission. So if you're interested in the astrology for the week, it will be available to monthly subscribers to the Catalyst Classroom. That's a $5 a month subscription through Subscribestar. I actually want to share a couple of reading things if you're interested. Of course, if you're not on my email list, you can do that by going to my website. Everything you actually need is in the description box below in terms of social media, website, the Starseed Ministry, intro video, what the Catalyst Classroom is all about. So you can get everything you need from down there. But I do want to just remind people that I am still offering the eclipse cycle personal astrological forecast. We're looking at the full 6 months. And so that covers the Mars retrograde. That covers Pluto coming into Aquarius before, it retrogrades back into Capricorn. This is, and of course, the equinox, right? So this is a 6-month forecast. It's $99. It's 90 plus minutes recorded reading of your natal chart, your progressions, whatever starseed elements are relevant. If you have Pluto and Scorpio, right, your millennial generation people, I feel like that this eclipse is really big on you guys as well. So this is always an option to see how the next 6 months, because this is we're still falling through the portal right now, but our experiences here are going to be the ripple effect out through the next 6 months. So you can go to catalystenergies.net and book and pay directly through the website if you're interested in that. And of course, if you are a Taurus or Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising person, I mean, this is your lunar cycle this month. And so the sale rate for the lunar transit forecast is available to both Scorpio and Taurus people. If you are a Scorpio, Pluto and Scorpio person, I would consider extending this sale rate to you as well, even if your sun or moon are not in this, because just understanding the eclipses themselves, I think, is going to be very important in terms of the millennials. if you have Pluto and Scorpio. So again, catalystenergies.net, you can book and pay directly through the site, and that's either a 30-minute tune-up, a 60-minute forecast, 33, 66 respectively. So, and you can get on my email list, and I'll be sending out all kinds of stuff this week to let you know what's going on. The Catalyst Classroom is already posted for subscribers. The session 2 was actually, the mythology is going to go on the next one, but we talked about the eclipses, we talked about the astrology of the sun in the signs, in the houses. We did some demo charts. One of a very relevant and globally known person, a public figure that strangely enough is Chiron was a big part of that person's chart. So again, this is available for subscribers as well. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in the weekly astrology that's going to be recorded and posted tomorrow, if you're not a subscriber but you are interested, it will be on my website, available to purchase for a small fee to have access to the digital download of the recording and the weekly astrology. So my friends, it's going to be quite the week, so take very good care of yourselves. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the support. Please consider subscribing if you're not already, and hit the like button, share, comment. It really does help the channel get to the right people. It's not even so much about growth as much as the people who are resonating with this message finding and being part of the Starseed Fellowship, because I think it's so important that we have fellowship and we have a space to be in. So I will talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you on the Starseed Ministry on Monday. Take care.